My name is Aria, and this story is about my mother. She's 53 years old, a self-made millionaire, and one of the strongest women I've ever known. But strength doesn't mean people won't try to take advantage of you. And that's exactly what happened, by the one person she trusted the most. If you've ever seen betrayal up close, you'll know it doesn't start with a loud explosion. It starts quietly, slowly, almost invisibly, until one day you wake up and realize the world you thought was safe has already been shattered. This isn't just about money. It's about trust, betrayal, and revenge. And yes, revenge was served. My mother, a self-made millionaire. Growing up, my mom wasn't born into wealth. She clawed her way up from nothing. Her parents died when she was just a teenager, and she raised herself while putting herself through college. She went into real estate in her 20s, worked endlessly, flipping run-down houses until she built an empire of luxury properties in New York. By the time she was 40, she was a millionaire. By 50, she was a legend in her field. She raised me single-handedly. My father wasn't around, he left before I was even old enough to remember his face. My mom never remarried. She poured all her energy into her work and into me. I always admired her for that. But there's a cost to success. When you have money, everyone wants something from you. That's where Maria came in. The maid who became family. Maria started working for my mom when I was 14. She was in her 30s back then, quiet but kind, and she quickly became part of our household. She cleaned, cooked, and sometimes even looked after me when my mom was away on business. Over the years, she wasn't just the maid. She was family. My mom treated her like a younger sister. She gave her gifts on holidays, paid her more than fair, and even helped Maria's family back in Mexico. I remember one Christmas when my mom surprised Maria by paying off her brother's hospital bills overseas. Maria cried and hugged her, saying she would never forget this kindness. Yeah, apparently, she forgot. The change I noticed. When I turned 21, I started noticing things. Maria was different. She wasn't as humble as before. She started dressing better, nicer handbags, jewelry, clothes that I knew she couldn't afford on her salary. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she saved, maybe someone gifted her things, maybe she just got lucky with shopping. But then came him. The boyfriend. His name was Ricky. A slick, smooth-talking guy who looked like trouble the moment I saw him. He was about 10 years younger than Maria, but he had that arrogance of someone who thought he owned the world. I caught him at our house one night when I came home early from college. He was sitting in the living room like he belonged there, drinking one of my mom's expensive wines. Maria rushed in, flustered, saying, "Oh, Aria, this is my friend." Friend, my ass. From then on, Ricky became a shadow around our house. Whenever Mom wasn't home, he was. Whenever I left for class, he showed up. And slowly, Maria wasn't just our maid anymore, she was acting like she ran the place. But Mom? Mom didn't see it. She trusted Maria blindly. The first signs of theft. It started small. A missing bracelet from my mom's dresser. A few $100s from her purse. At first, Mom thought she misplaced them. She was busy, distracted, and she believed Maria was above suspicion. But I noticed the pattern. Every time Ricky was around, something disappeared. When I told my mom, she shook her head. "Aria, don't be paranoid. Maria has been with us for years. She's family." I wanted to scream. But Mom's trust in Maria was unshakable. Until the night everything collapsed. The night of the disappearance. It was late, almost midnight, when I woke up to noises downstairs. At first, I thought maybe Mom had returned early from her trip. But when I went to check, I froze. Maria and Ricky were in the living room. Suitcases open. Jewelry boxes scattered. My mom's safe wide open. They were stealing everything. I gasped, and Maria's eyes shot up to mine. For a second, I thought she'd try to explain, maybe cry, maybe beg. But no, she just glared at me, like I was the intruder. Go back to bed, Aria, she said coldly. This doesn't concern you. And then Ricky smirked, zipping up a bag filled with cash and documents. By the time I found my voice, they were gone, out the door, into the night. My mom's heartbreak. When Mom came home the next morning, she walked into an empty safe, a ransacked house, and me sitting on the couch in shock. I'll never forget her face. My strong, unshakable mother, completely broken. She had trusted Maria like family. And Maria had stolen not just money, but her dignity, her security, her belief in loyalty. My mom sat in silence for a long time, and then she said, very softly. They think they've won. But they don't know who they've betrayed. And that was the moment I realized, revenge wasn't just inevitable. It was necessary. My mother has always been calm under pressure. When Maria and Ricky stole from us, I expected her to call the police immediately, report the theft, raise hell. But instead, she did something I didn't expect, she stayed quiet. Not because she was weak. But because she was calculating. Silence before the storm. That first day, she said almost nothing. She poured herself a glass of wine, sat at the dining table, and stared into the distance. I paced the room like a caged animal. Mom, we have to do something. They could be halfway across the country by now. She finally looked at me, her eyes cold and sharp. Aria, listen to me. When someone steals from me, they don't get away. Not ever. But I don't go rushing after them in anger. I let them believe they've won. It sent shivers down my spine. Because I knew that tone. I'd seen her negotiate million-dollar deals, and she always used that same calm voice before she tore her opponent apart. Maria had no idea what she had unleashed. Following the trail. Mom didn't just call the police. She called her private investigator. Yes, my mother had a PI on retainer. When you're in real estate at her level, you can't afford to be blindsided. She used him for background checks on business partners, competitors, even employees. Within 48 hours, we had a location. Maria and Ricky hadn't gone far. They were holed up in a luxury condo in Miami, living like royalty with my mother's money. But here's the twist, Maria wasn't just spending money. She was investing it. The PI discovered she had opened shell accounts, funneled cash through Ricky's name, and was even attempting to buy property under a fake LLC. It wasn't just theft. It was fraud. And fraud leaves a paper trail. Digging into their past. The PI dug deeper. Turns out Ricky wasn't some charming bad boy. He was a career scam artist. He had a history of small-time cons, romancing women, draining their bank accounts, moving on. Maria was his biggest jackpot yet. But what stunned me was Maria's transformation. This wasn't the humble, grateful maid we knew. This was a woman drunk on power, finally living the life she thought she deserved. And she wasn't being careful. On social media, Ricky was posting pictures, expensive dinners, designer clothes, champagne on yachts. Maria was right there with him, flashing jewelry that used to sit in my mother's safe. They weren't hiding. They were flaunting. And that arrogance? That was going to be their downfall. Mom's plan. One night, Mom called me into her study. She had spread papers across her desk with bank statements, property records, photos from the PI. Aria, she said, we could hand this to the police right now. But that would be too easy. They'd get a few years in prison, maybe less. They'd still keep some of the money hidden. They'd get out and move on. She looked me dead in the eyes. No. I want them ruined. I want them to feel what betrayal feels like. I want them to lose everything. I felt my stomach twist, not from fear, but from anticipation. What do we do? She smiled, a dangerous, sharp smile. We use their greed against them. The trap. Here's the thing about thieves, once they taste luxury, they can't stop. They always want more. Mom decided we'd set a trap. But to do that, we had to bait them. She used one of her shell companies, a completely legal one she often used for discreet property deals. Under a false name, she put out word in Miami's underground circles about an investment opportunity. A beachfront mansion was supposedly for sale under the table, cash buyers only, no questions asked, quick turnover for a stolen deal. We made sure Ricky and Maria would hear about it. And they did. The PI confirmed it. Ricky had started asking questions about this secret mansion sale. His eyes lit up at the idea of doubling their stolen money overnight. Maria followed his lead. It was almost too easy. The waiting game. While we set up the trap, I had to watch from the sidelines as Ricky and Maria paraded around like they were invincible. Every time I saw their smug faces on Instagram, Maria draped in diamonds, Ricky with his gold watches, I wanted to scream. But Mom kept me grounded. Patience, Aria. The longer the fall, the sweeter the revenge. And she was right. We needed them overconfident, reckless, blind to danger. And they were. My breaking point. Still, I'll admit, I cracked one night. I made a fake account and DM'd Maria on Instagram. I don't even know why. Maybe I wanted her to know she hadn't broken us. All I wrote was, "You stole from the wrong family." She read it. And then she replied with just 3 words. "Watch me win." I threw my phone across the room. But instead of being angry, my mom just laughed when I told her. "Oh, Aria, she thinks this is a game. Let's make sure we're the ones holding the rules." The setup in motion. 2 weeks later, the bait was ready. The seller of the beachfront mansion, an actor hired by my mom's PI, arranged a private showing. The price tag? $4 million, cash only. Maria and Ricky couldn't resist. They transferred large sums from their stolen accounts, preparing to buy the mansion under their fake LLC. They thought they were being clever. They thought they'd outsmarted the system. But every move they made was being recorded, documented, and traced by us. The night before. The night before the deal was supposed to go down, I couldn't sleep. My chest felt heavy with adrenaline. What if something goes wrong? I whispered to Mom in the dark. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Aria, I've faced billion-dollar sharks in this world. Maria and Ricky are minnows. Tomorrow, we end this. I believed her. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about money anymore. This was personal. The morning of the mansion deal felt like the air itself was charged with static. Mom was calm as ever, sipping her coffee and reading the paper like it was any other day. Me? I could barely keep my hands from shaking. Breathe, Aria, she said without looking up. Today isn't the end, it's the beginning of their downfall. She was right. Because this wasn't just about catching them in the act. This was about destroying their future, their credibility, their safety net, piece by piece. The mansion meeting. The seller my mom had hired, an actor with a convincing fake backstory, arranged to meet Maria and Ricky at the beachfront property. The place was real, a gorgeous multi-million-dollar mansion, but of course it wasn't really for sale. From a discreet surveillance van down the street, my mom and I watched everything unfold on hidden cameras the PI had planted. Maria showed up first, wearing an expensive silk dress and oversized sunglasses, like she was auditioning for a reality TV show. Ricky strutted in behind her, dripping gold chains, his shirt unbuttoned down to his chest. They looked every bit the part of new money royalty. Except they weren't royalty, they were thieves about to step into a trap. The fake seller greeted them warmly, led them through the house, showing off the marble floors, the infinity pool, the private beach access. Maria's eyes sparkled as if she already owned it. Ricky was cocky, asking all the smart investor questions he must have Googled the night before. So, how fast can we close? Cash won't be a problem. I clenched my fists in the van. Watching them act like they deserved any of this made my blood boil. The bait. The seller casually mentioned that in order to secure the property, they'd need to transfer an initial holding deposit, $500,000, into an escrow account. What Maria and Ricky didn't know was that the escrow account wasn't real. It was one of Mom's setups, created with the help of her lawyers, perfectly legal and traceable. Every dollar they sent would be evidence of fraud, laundering, and conspiracy. And just as expected, Ricky grinned, pulled out his phone, and initiated the transfer. Watching the confirmation hit our hidden camera feed felt like fire in my veins. Proof. Solid proof. Mom's lips curved into that dangerous smile again. One nail in the coffin. Maria's delusion. As they signed fake documents and posed like they had just scored the deal of a lifetime, Maria said something that nearly made me laugh out loud in the surveillance van. She turned to Ricky and said, "Can you believe it? I used to scrub toilets. Now I'm buying mansions." Ricky kissed her cheek, smug as ever. "Babe, this is just the start. We'll be untouchable." Untouchable. That word burned into my mind. Because in less than 48 hours, they were going to be exposed to the world, not as millionaires, but as parasites. The exit. After the tour, the sellers shook their hands, promising the paperwork would be finalized within the week. Maria and Ricky left the mansion practically glowing, already planning their future. I thought that would be the satisfying climax. But Mom wasn't done. "This isn't enough," she told me later that night. "Catching them in fraud is one thing. But they humiliated me. They stole years of trust. They need to feel humiliated too." And so, phase 2 of the plan began. The social bomb. The next day, Mom's lawyers filed a discreet but devastating legal motion. All the evidence, bank transfers, fake LLC documents, the recorded footage of the deal, was packaged neatly and sent not just to the police, but to every major business contact Maria and Ricky had tried to cozy up to. But the real bomb? Mom leaked their story to the press. Not under her own name, of course. Through anonymous tips, reporters got hold of juicy details, made steals millions from New York real estate mogul, flees with con artist boyfriend, caught in Miami mansion scam. Within 24 hours, Maria and Ricky's faces were plastered across news sites, local channels, and social media. Their Instagram, once filled with champagne and luxury cars, was now flooded with comments calling them thieves, liars, trash. Maria tried to delete her account. Ricky made his private. But it was too late. The internet had smelled blood, and it wasn't letting go. Their reaction. I'll never forget the footage from the PI's cameras after the story broke. Maria was pacing their condo, screaming at Ricky. "You said no one would find out. You said we were safe." Ricky snapped back, "Shut up. It's just the news, they don't know anything." But even as he said it, his phone was blowing up. Friends ghosting him. Associates cutting ties. Their fake empire collapsing in real time. And then came the knock on the door. The Miami PD. The arrest. Watching Maria and Ricky get dragged out of their rented condo in handcuffs was cathartic. Maria was crying, mascara streaming down her face, begging them to believe she was innocent. Ricky kept shouting about false charges and "we'll sue you all." But none of it mattered. The evidence was ironclad. The safe from our house had been found in their storage unit. Jewelry, cash, property deeds, all of it. Combined with the fraud from the mansion purchase, they were done. When I saw the news clip later that night, Maria, the woman who once called my mother her sister, now in an orange jumpsuit, being shoved into a police car, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief. Anger. Satisfaction. And yes, a little sadness. Because betrayal, even when avenged, leaves scars. Mom's final words. That night, Mom sat beside me on the couch, watching the coverage. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She just sipped her wine and said softly, "Trust is the most valuable currency, Aria. More than money. More than power. Once it's gone, nothing can replace it." I nodded, understanding more in that moment than ever before. And then she added, almost as an afterthought, "But I'll admit, it feels good to make sure they'll never betray anyone again." I thought the arrest would be the end. That once Maria and Ricky were in handcuffs, everything would finally feel resolved. But I was wrong. Because arrests are just the beginning. The real satisfaction came in the courtroom, where every lie they told, every greedy scheme they ran, was dragged into the light for everyone to see. The first hearing. The first time I saw Maria in court, she looked nothing like the glamorous woman who once posed in silk dresses and diamonds. Her hair was greasy, her face pale, and she wore a cheap beige jumpsuit instead of designer clothes. When she turned her head and saw me and my mom sitting behind the prosecution table, her expression twisted, somewhere between shame and venom. Ricky was next to her, still trying to act cocky. He leaned back in his chair, smirking, like he thought this was just a small inconvenience. But I could see the cracks in his bravado. His hands shook every time he adjusted his tie. The charges read out loud made even the judge raise an eyebrow. Grand larceny. Wire fraud. Money laundering. Conspiracy. It wasn't just theft anymore. It was organized crime. Maria's tears. When the prosecution detailed how Maria had betrayed my mom, how she'd been treated like family, gifted money, supported through hardships, Maria started to cry. At first, I thought it was genuine. But then I noticed something. She only cried harder when the reporters scribbled notes or the cameras zoomed in. It wasn't guilt. It was performance. Mom leaned toward me and whispered, "Notice how she never once looks at me?" Not once. She was right. Maria couldn't meet my mom's eyes. She kept her gaze down, weeping into tissues, playing the victim. But everyone in that room knew better. Ricky's smirk. Ricky, on the other hand, tried a different tactic. He kept acting like it was all Maria's idea, that he was just along for the ride. His lawyer painted him as a poor man manipulated by a desperate woman. Ladies and gentlemen, my client was blinded by love. He never intended to defraud anyone. I wanted to scream. Blinded by love? This man had orchestrated the whole thing. He was the spider, and Maria was just the fly caught in his web. But here's the thing about webs, they stick to everyone involved. The evidence. When the prosecution rolled out the evidence, Ricky's smirk vanished. The bank transfers. The fake LLC paperwork. The video of him bragging about cash not being a problem during the mansion tour. And then, the safe. A police officer wheeled in the very safe that had been stolen from our house, still dented from when Ricky pried it open. Inside were the jewelry boxes my mom had collected for years, family heirlooms, priceless watches, documents. The jury looked disgusted. And for the first time, Maria's tears looked real. My turn. I wasn't just a spectator. I was a witness. When I took the stand, I told the court everything I saw that night, the suitcases, the open safe, Maria looking me in the eyes and telling me to go back to bed. My voice shook at first, but then I remembered that moment, her cold, dismissive tone, like I was nothing. And I steadied. I trusted her, I said to the jury. My mother trusted her. She wasn't just our maid. She was family. And she threw it all away for greed. When I stepped down, Maria still wouldn't look at me. The verdict. After weeks of testimony, it all came down to one moment. The jury filed back into the courtroom. My chest felt like it would burst from the silence. On the charge of grand larceny, guilty. On the charge of wire fraud, guilty. On the charge of money laundering, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy, guilty. Maria broke down sobbing. Ricky clenched his jaw, his face red with rage. The judge sentenced Ricky to 22 years in federal prison. Maria got 18 years. Neither of them would see freedom again until they were old, broken, irrelevant. Justice. After the trial. The fallout was brutal, for them. Every penny they had stolen was seized. The properties, the accounts, the cars, the jewelry, it all went back to my mom. Maria's family overseas cut ties with her, ashamed of her betrayal. Ricky's so-called friends vanished, moving on to their next scam. And the press? They had a field day. For weeks, Maria and Ricky's names trended online, mocked as the con artist couple who thought they could outsmart a millionaire. Maria, who once dreamed of being seen as wealthy and powerful, was now famous, for all the wrong reasons. The prison letters. Months after the trial, something strange happened. Maria started writing letters. To my mom. To me. At first, she begged for forgiveness. She claimed Ricky had manipulated her, that she never wanted to hurt us, that she was lost and blinded. Then, when my mom didn't respond, the tone changed. The begging turned to anger. You ruined me. I had nothing, and you took away the little I built. You'll pay for this. Mom read the letters once, then tossed them into the fireplace without a word. She's still trying to make herself the victim, she told me. But she doesn't realize, this is the life she chose. Ricky's fate. As for Ricky, prison wasn't kind to him. The PI kept us updated. Apparently, Ricky had enemies waiting for him behind bars. He wasn't the first scammer to con the wrong people, and word travels fast in prison. The last I heard, he wasn't smirking anymore. My mother's closure. One evening, months after it all ended, I found my mom sitting on the balcony of our Manhattan apartment, sipping her wine, watching the city lights. She looked at peace. Do you feel better now? I asked. She thought for a long moment before answering. Not better. But lighter. Some betrayals you never forget, Aria. But at least now, when I think of Maria, I don't feel anger. I feel pity. She had everything, trust, loyalty, a place in this family. And she traded it for nothing. I leaned against her shoulder, finally understanding what she meant. Because revenge hadn't just destroyed Maria and Ricky. It had freed us. It's been over a year since Maria and Ricky were sentenced. Sometimes it feels like it all happened yesterday, the shock of seeing them emptying our safe, the sting of betrayal, the courtroom drama. Other times it feels like a distant nightmare, a story I watched instead of lived. But one thing I know for sure, nothing in my life has ever changed me the way this did. Life after revenge. People always ask, did revenge make you feel better? The truth? Yes and no. Seeing Maria in that orange jumpsuit, hearing the word guilty repeated again and again, it gave me a rush of justice. Knowing Ricky would rot behind bars where his smirk couldn't charm anyone else, it was satisfying. But revenge doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't fill the hole left when someone you loved turns out to be a snake. That's the part no one tells you. Revenge gives closure, not healing. Healing has to come from within. My mother's strength. If there's one person I admire most in this entire story, it's my mom. She could have collapsed. She could have let Maria's betrayal turn her bitter or paranoid. She could have drowned herself in anger. But she didn't. She fought back with intelligence, with patience, with strategy. She showed me that power isn't in screaming or lashing out, it's in staying calm while your enemies dig their own graves. Now, whenever I face betrayal in life, even small betrayals, I hear her voice in my head. Patience, Aria. The longer the fall, the sweeter the revenge. Maria's reality. Last I heard, Maria spends most of her days working in the prison laundry. The woman who once strutted through Miami in silk dresses is now scrubbing stains for pennies an hour. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about my mom when she folds sheets. If she remembers the Christmas my mom paid for her brother's hospital bills. If she remembers how she cried in gratitude, swearing she'd never forget. And then I realize, it doesn't matter. Maria made her choice. And choices have consequences. Ricky's reality. As for Ricky, word is he's still trying to play charming behind bars. But prison isn't a place where charm gets you far. He's been transferred twice for getting into fights. The PI says his health is declining, that the stress has aged him. And I think that's fitting. He lived his life feeding off other people like a parasite. Now, he's stuck in a place where there's no one left to feed on. The real lesson. But here's the biggest lesson I learned from all of this. Money can be stolen. Jewelry can be taken. Even trust can be shattered. But dignity? Dignity only leaves if you let it. Maria and Ricky thought they had one. They thought they humiliated my mom. But in the end, they humiliated themselves. They showed the world who they really were. And we showed the world who we were too, resilient, unbreakable, unwilling to bow down. A personal note. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that moment when Maria told me to go back to bed. It replays in my mind like a scar burned into memory. That coldness. That certainty that she was in control. But now, when I think of it, I don't feel powerless anymore. Because I know that while she thought she was in control that night, the truth is, we were always going to win. Closure. So where are we now? Mom rebuilt. She didn't really need to, her empire was strong enough to survive the theft, but she poured herself into new projects anyway. Not because she had to, but because that's who she is. And me? I finished college, and now I work alongside her in real estate. Stronger. Smarter. Wiser. We don't talk about Maria often. She's just a ghost in our story now. A warning, a reminder. But when people ask what happened to her, I tell them simply. She traded trust for greed. And she lost everything. Final thoughts. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. Be careful who you let into your circle. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones holding the knife. And if you're ever betrayed, don't waste your energy on rage. Don't let the betrayal define you. Instead, do what my mom did. Stay calm. Stay patient. And let your enemies destroy themselves with their own greed. Because trust me, revenge doesn't always require violence. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is simply watching them fall apart under the weight of their own choices. Reddit-style ending. So yeah, that's the story of how my mom's maid and her scam artist boyfriend stole millions, tried to run, and ended up rotting in prison instead. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they had outsmarted us. They thought they'd won. But in the end, my mom reminded me of the most important truth. No one betrays us and walks away unscathed.